Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi.
Good morning, Dr. Reuben. I'm fine, thank you. Good morning, Adefemi. Good morning, Rufai.
Feb.
That's me. All right, let me tell you what's happening around the world now. A ceasefire brokered by the United States between Iran and Israel has started. The phased-in ceasefire, which Iran would stop firing. It would see Iran stop firing for 12 hours before Israel also would do the same for another 12 hours. That was Trump's idea in order to appease Israel. Israeli concerns also that Iran would not hold up its end of the deal. Now, the deal appeared to be on shaky ground early hours of this morning before Israel, in recent moments, confirmed that it had entered into the agreement. Now, despite the prospect of peace before the truce, at least 5 waves of air raid sirens were heard in Israel as the IDF accused Iran of launching missiles after 4 a.m. local time in Tehran. Israel also says that at least 4 people were killed and 8 others were injured in Beersheba following a strike in the southern Israel residential area. Now, the move appeared to be confirmed by Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, who posted on X saying that his country's armed forces had been punishing Israel and that punishment of Israel would continue until the very last minute. Now, on Monday, Iran launched retaliatory missiles at the largest US military base in the Middle East. It's called Al Udeid in Qatar, where about 10,000 US troops are stationed. Now, Iran did give forewarning, and there have been differing reports about how many missiles were fired. Iran said it fired 6 missiles, but the US said it was 14, and Qatar said it was 19. It has been reported that at least 1 missile impacted the facility, but there were no casualties. Hours before the attack, Qatar said that it was temporarily closing its airspace, and shortly after, the United States and the United Kingdom told its citizens in Qatar to shelter in place. Now, other countries in the region, including Bahrain and Kuwait, also briefly closed their airspace. Now, a divided US Supreme Court has allowed the Trump administration to deport migrants to countries other than their homelands. Now, the unsigned order from the conservative-dominated top court came in response to an emergency appeal by the Justice Department to lift a stay imposed by a lower court. The original case challenging the third country deportations will now be heard by an appeals court. But the Supreme Court says, essentially, these removals can continue for now. Now, the original case involves the deportation of 8 men, 2 from Myanmar, 2 from Cuba, a Vietnamese, a Laotian, a Mexican, and 1 from South Sudan, who the US authorities say were convicted of violent crimes. Now, they were all being flown to South Sudan, but when the court order came down and has been held since, they have all been held at a US military base in Djibouti, also in East Africa. But obviously not all of these men are African. Now, the Trump administration has defended third country deportations as necessary since the home nations of some of those who are targeted for removal often refuse to accept them. And finally, Canada has signed a wide-ranging defense pact with the European Union as Donald Trump and global instability prompts traditional US allies to deepen their alliances. Now, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney on Monday joined European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and the head of the European Council, Antonio Costa, in Brussels, where they signed a security and defense partnership, pledged more support for Ukraine, as well as joint work on issues from the climate crisis to artificial intelligence. Well, those are your stories on World Brief. Love to hear your thoughts before we move on to the papers.
You see, Trump feels upset when people call him Taco, but he lives by the day.
Tell us again what TACO stands for.
Trump always chickens out.
Oh.
Been by yesterday.
What even by? Speak to the viewers.
You said your strike was successful. It was a failure. Let's call it.
He said it completely obliterated.
It didn't obliterate nada.
It didn't obliterate, but it did cause some damage.
It was a complete failure. In fact, Grossi of IAEA has come out to look at it. Where are the radiations? Where's the centrifuges heat? I repeat, you people just wasted those bombs for nothing. The bunker buster bombs, and you just traveled 30 hours, wasted fuel. That operation cost millions of dollars, by the way, of American taxpayers' money. Wasted. Babulo Jassi. It's so much hot Trump when the likes of CNN and other media was saying that it was a failure, it pained him so much. He went on True Social, was abusing CNN, abusing Anasiku, abusing all the journalists. Why will he say my trend? When he saw that he failed on that, the next thing he now went for was, after he got his security meeting, and you see, I'm sad that despite the fact that Iran has committed heinous crimes against humanity, I never thought there would be a day that I would say Iran was the most civilized in the room. It shows how fallen America has become. In all of this, Iran has been the most civilized in the room. Because you know what Iran wanted? Iran didn't want to escalate. Yeah, you can say their backs are on the ground and everything. Iran told them in advance that there were going to be strikes so that they can activate their missile defense systems to push out the bombs. Then you, Trump, now came out yesterday night and you tweeted on Truth. I have Truth Social, so I monitor everything real time.
Well,
I follow. Then he said, God bless Iran. After he first met in a security meeting, I'm sure they will have told him, don't escalate this in a security meeting. God bless Iran, let's sit on the table, let's talk now. Minutes after, he now tweeted for a ceasefire. Maybe it was you that was talking complete surrender a couple of days ago. Maybe it was you that was talking about complete obliteration some days ago. Now you are not calling for, you even said God bless Iran.
Yes, no.
So you went ahead with your charade. You just put America, you made America look like a joke. You demystified America.
Yes.
With all this, you're not calling for peace. You're not saying, okay, Iran has its back to the floor. Yeah, they need a lot. They can't close the Strait of Hormuz easily like that because it's going to affect them too. And they need to so they will follow the ceasefire. But it's just been another charade. And you see, that's why people are beginning to see America finish. The only reason why they respect America is because they spend about close to $1 trillion on military arsenal. Now that's why you see that countries like Canada are going into partnership with Europe. Germany, led by Germany and the likes, are going to spend close to $1 trillion. To most of the things they used to order from America, they are going to be making it there now. So that's the way of the world as we are speaking today. So let's stop engaging this man's jamboree called Trump. It's just katakiti, 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 katafu.
Thank you, Rufai.
All right. Well, I think that many people would say that this was the predictable outcome. So consistently over the past few days, we've spoken about the fact that Donald Trump was not going to engage in this, engage the United States in terms of military involvement unless he knew that it would be absolutely successful and he wouldn't suffer any losses. No lives were lost on the American side. No weapons, no weapons, no fighter jets. Nothing was lost on his part. And so on the American side, we can say that this was a successful operation. Then the other issue around it, of course, is isolating Iran, which has also been successful. Because, we repeat, we haven't heard from the axis of resistance. We have not heard from Hamas. We have not heard from Hezbollah, Houthis, and so forth. They are no longer interested in being part of this active warfare with Iran, which was a massive part of the agenda. I think the only outstanding thing, of course, is, and it's not a small thing, it's a big thing, is, of course, Gaza, which I know there is a group that is advocating for the fact that this ceasefire needs to include Gaza and to also include the return of those Israeli hostages and an unconditional ceasefire that will make it a more holistic ceasefire, and it will ensure that any aggression between Iran's proxies, Israel and Israel's partners can genuinely come to an end now. So I think for me, that's what I'm looking forward to see how we can bring in Gaza into this ceasefire. Benjamin Netanyahu is saying that, well, all of Israel's goals have been achieved. That stands to be proven because, of course, there's still a question mark as to whether those nuclear weapons were truly destroyed. Americans maintain that their war was never against Iran, it was against the potential of nuclear weapons. And they feel that the capacity to do so significantly has been eroded. So as much as some of the centrifuges and things may have been driven out of the storages at the various places, Fordo, Isfahan, and so forth, the fact that the actual plants themselves have been impacted. Again, we continue to wait for the degree of the impact. Does go to show that there was some degree of success on the American side for what they rate success to be as far as this operation goes. But I think for me, what's important to note is the fact that, yes, this particular front of the war has been brought to an end. But what's happening with Gaza? Because that has been the one that has been going on for too long. There are too many casualties, and there's still too much that stands hanging in the balance. And I think it would be unfair for us to focus on what has just transpired now with this 12-day war without remembering the fact that there's a 2-year war that has been going on the Gaza front.
Okay, I'll try to run through the 3 topics that you have brought very quickly by editorializing. On the ceasefire, there's still a lot of uncertainty around it. What we have is a missile-driven peace process. Now, the U.S. attacked nuclear sites in Iran on Saturday. Minister of Foreign Affairs of Iran said, we will fight back, we will retaliate. On Monday, they did. Attacking American air base in Al-Udeid air base in Qatar, forcing Qatar to close its airspace for about 6 hours, and then they later reopened. They told America before the attack. They informed Qatar before the attack. And then on the basis of all of this, America said, well, they told us they were going to attack, and but now there will be ceasefire in the coming hours. So who's taking who for a ride? You know, so we see, you know, there's some kind of balance of terror going on. And now, as a result of the promised ceasefire, which President Trump says has now come into effect. So, but I say there is uncertainty around it, because one, I have not seen any categorical statement by Israel. What I have seen is Iran saying is that if Israel attacks us, we will still fight back. So I don't think anybody should put much store by that. The second point is that what happens hereafter? President Trump has called it the 12-day war, and that there is a ceasefire in place. But the original issue is about the nuclear weaponry of Iran. So what is going to follow after that? So there's an issue about uncertainty there. Are they going to return to the negotiating table? What is going to happen? So these are the basic issues. But of course, when Rutus comes, if he gives us enough time, we'll talk about the economic implications. Sure. I don't think that's relevant to your segment. Now, the second thing, Canada and EU, they came together. They signed Defense and Security Pact. They reached agreement on Ukraine to support Ukraine, and also reached agreements on artificial intelligence and climate crisis. Right. I think one point here is that, you know, Trump alienating, disrespecting traditional allies has now forced them to come together. The UK formed an alliance before now. Asian countries are also forming an alliance. Everybody is distancing themselves from the United States to protect the objective of global peace that the Pope has talked about, Pope Leo XIV, that Antonio Guterres has talked about, that the leaders of the EU have talked about. What does Canada stand to gain? There is a 150 billion euro fund, you know, defense and security fund that, you know, the European Union is looking at. And now with this cooperation, Canada will have access to it. It's called the SAFE program. Yes. So that's the advantage for Canada. But Canada also has a natural reason to, you know, be, as McCartney put it, the non-European country that is very European. Yeah. You know, I thought that was a message for Donald Trump, who is isolating. NATO is going to begin its meeting today. The big issue with NATO is about the 5% of GDP to support defense spending. Now, some of the countries are pushing against that. Germany, for example, and some other countries. But how that works out, we will see. It's a 2-day meeting. And Trump is expected there. And we would like to see how he looks at McCartney and EU leaders. Finally, the issue about third country deportations. Yes. Now, in April, Judge Brian Murphy granted an injunction saying that Donald Trump's administration's invocation of the Alien Migrants Act of 1798. It's an alien act of 1798. That's what the law says. was unlawful, was illegal, and he granted an injunction. The Department of Justice went to the Supreme Court. Now the Supreme Court, that is dominated by conservatives, now lifted the injunction and says, for now, Trump can deport people to third countries. South Sudan, as it happened. South Sudan is a war zone. They have something they call Secot in El Salvador, which is a mega prison for criminals. People have also been deported there. Murphy's argument in April was that, look, you should give these people at least 10 to 15 days for them to challenge, and you don't send them to where they will go and die. And on the basis of this, the liberal justices on the Supreme Court, Sonia Sotomayor, who wrote the dissenting opinion, Ketanji Brown, who supported her, and Elian Kagan, those are the three liberal justices on the Supreme Court of the United States. They dissented. They are saying that what Trump is doing is a flagrant violation of a constitution of the United States, the country that is known as a land of freedom. However, the case is still on appeal, and the Supreme Court may have ruled, but we would like to see what happens with the appeal in the appeal court of the United States.
Indeed. Well, thank you all for your submissions. It's time now for us to take a look at newspaper headlines. But before we do begin our newspaper review, let's take a look at this update. Now, the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners has awarded Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala with the 2025 Cressy Award, which is a prestigious honor recognizing lifetime achievement in the detection of and deterrence of fraud. Now, the award was presented at the 36th Annual ACFE Global Fraud Conference, which was held in Nashville, Tennessee last night, where Dr. Okonjo-Iweala took to the stage to deliver a powerful speech on the state of global fraud and the role she has played to combat it. Now, as we know, Dr. Okonjo-Iweala is the Director General of the World Trade Organization, the first woman and first African to hold the role. She's also an economist and an international development expert with more than 40 years of experience. She previously served twice as Nigeria's finance minister, where she oversaw reforms to fight corruption and was instrumental in the Paris Club's $30 billion debt write-off for Nigeria. She also held senior roles at the World Bank and has been on the boards of Standard Chartered Bank and Twitter, as well as Gavi. Additionally, she was the African Union and World Health Organization's COVID-19 Special Envoy in 2020. A huge congratulations to her. Now, moving on to the newspapers. This day leads with news of President Tinubu launching the distribution of 2,000 tractors and thousands of farming implements under the Renewed Hope Agricultural Mechanization Program, which is an initiative aimed at boosting food security and national prosperity. Speaking during the launch of the program in Abuja, the president reaffirmed his administration's commitment to delivering on its promises and building a sustainable agricultural future for the country. Now, the Daily Independent also leads with the prospects for Nigeria's agricultural future. Let's take a look at the New Telegraph. And the New Telegraph looks at the 10th National Assembly, where 32 representatives have defected to different parties in the past 2 years. As a result, the ruling APC now leads with 214 members. The PDP has 92, Labour has 24, the NNPP with 16, APGA with 6, the SDP and the YPP both have 2 each, and the ADC has 1. Now, speaking of lawmaking, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, also our First Lady, says that there is no budgetary provision from the central government to run her office and has appealed to the National Assembly to provide direct annual funding to the Office of the First Lady to enable it to execute one impactful social project per year. Let's take a look at the Tribune, where Betty Ayamu Akeredolu, who's the former First Lady of Ondo, has criticized the current governor, Lucky Ayedatiwa, the governor of the state, over the demolition of the memorial park for the victims of the June 5, 2022 terror attack on St. Francis Xavier's Catholic Church in Owo town. Now, the administration of Oluwarotimi Akeredolu, the late former governor of Ondo, constructed the memorial park to honor the 40 worshippers who were killed in that attack. However, the park was demolished on Saturday on the order of the administration of Lucky Ayedatiwa. Now, the incumbent governor says that he did so because of pressure from the Olowo of Owo and his council, who described the memorial's location near the palace as a cultural taboo and abomination. The Vanguard has the federal government rejecting the security advisory issued by the United States government to its citizens living in Abuja, saying that there is no security threat within the Federal Capital Territory. In the update, the U.S. Embassy and Consulate in Nigeria revealed that all U.S. Embassy employees and their families have been prohibited from visiting Nigerian military or government sites in the capital except for official duties. The embassy and said the advisory was issued in response to increased security concerns arising from current global developments and advised U.S. citizens in the country to stay alert in public places, avoid large gatherings, and limit non-essential travel and review their personal security plans. The Guardian leads with education, as the integrity of Nigeria's university accreditation process has again come under intense scrutiny as allegations of corruption and sharp practices involving the National Universities Commission continue to surface. Lawmakers, academics, and parents are all raising concerns that bribery and manipulation are undermining the credibility of academic programs across the country. Multiple sources have alleged that some universities that are desperate to secure accreditation for their courses resort to unethical conduct just to scale the accreditation hurdle. These include hiring qualified and unqualified lecturers for just a day, temporarily assigning them offices with names on doors, and borrowing equipment solely for the duration of the NUC's scheduled visits. Those are your papers from Nigeria.
All right, thank you so much for that, Adefemi.
Always
Look forward to seeing
pleasure.
you tomorrow. Fantastic.